a very holistic approach to addressing these issues because they are all interrelated. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about functional medicine, right? Is getting to the root cause and using a holistic approach. For those folks that have been down this journey for a lot of years, and there's a fatigue that sets in, et cetera, and it's taxing not just on that individual, but of course the family, and it's the whole bundle, which can sometimes just be too much, too big of a burden to carry. What would you say the most important mind shift for those individuals would be who've been stuck on that pathway for all those years?
You've tried everything. You've changed your diet, you've detoxed, you've even moved homes, and yet you still feel sick. Headaches, brain fog, fatigue that no one can explain. What if it's not you? What if it's your environment? Welcome to Mold, Mycotoxins, and More. I'm John Bodie. Each week, I sit down with experts uncovering how mold, mycotoxins, and environmental exposures affect your health and what real recovery looks like. Let's get into today's conversation. The information provided on the Mold Pros podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to the podcast does not create a doctor-patient or professional-client relationship between you and the podcast host, guest, or the Mold Pros. The content shared should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And always seek the medical advice of your physician or qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, potential mold exposure, or health concerns. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast. And while we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we make no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, or suitability of all the information discussed. And guest experience and outcomes discussed on this podcast are individual cases and should not be considered typical results. Your situation may differ significantly. As always, if you think you have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. By listening to the Mold Pros podcast, you acknowledge that you understood this disclosure.
Have you become the canary in the coal mine? I often have clients tell me that after having mold exposure, they become super sensitive afterwards. They say, John, you don't need to take any samples. Just take me with you wherever you go, and I can tell you if there's mold in that building. Well, today we're going to try to unravel why that phenomenon may occur. Welcome back to Mold, Mycotoxins, and More, the podcast where we explore the hidden connections between environmental contamination and human health. I'm your host, John Bodie, co-founder of the Mold Pros, and every day we work with families who have done everything right. They've remediated their homes, they've taken binders, they've followed all the protocols, and yet they're still sick. So for today's episode, it's about why detox alone oftentimes fails and why true recovery, what it really requires. Our guest is Dr. David Morcom. He's a functional medicine practitioner located in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Morcom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm looking forward to this and just talking with you guys about the depth of my knowledge, going through it at a clinical point of view, but also at experiential as well. You know, I've been through it all and it was miserable, and I'm so glad to be able to support other people feel better.
Today's going to be really interesting. I've been looking forward to this episode. I'd like to really dig right in. You know, most people assume that mold recovery, it's about, leaving the environment, getting it taken care of, and then detoxing, and then everything's copacetic afterwards. From your perspective, what actually determines whether someone fully recovers or stays sensitive over the long term?
Yeah, I think it's a very common question. It's a very good one because the traditional stance of needing to throw away all the things in your home and kind of start from scratch that is often discussed, I don't know if I fully agree with that. And I think a lot of these people are not doing the deeper work to really get the mold out of their system and to really reprime and reset the immune system that has been haywire for so long to have resilience and tolerance again. And, a lot of times, people are getting out of the environment, great. And that's what your expertise is fixing that environment and getting people out. But really, a lot of times when people come to me and they say they've been treated, they haven't really gotten all the mycotoxins fully out. Maybe they did a little bit of liver work or something or took some supplements, But the reality is that these mycotoxins are very, very small and they're fat soluble, and they go into the deep recesses of the tissues themselves, into the body, into the brain. And, the mycotoxins are fat soluble, so they go and collect in the brain, of course. They collect in the mitochondria, which are these big things of fat where we make energy. So much of this, has to do with mitochondrial dysfunction, why there's so much fatigue, why there's so many neurological issues, because there's 10 times the amount of mitochondria in the brain than any other place in the body. So true healing is really being able to go into this place and do true cellular detox, not just some liver support, not just some lymphatic support, because, that's only going to get out the small little bit at the top that's easily available, which is a great start. But we want to go deeper. We want to actually empty the bucket of all these mycotoxins that are creating this inflammatory storm in the body and the brain that's poisoning the system, so people can just feel good at baseline. They don't need to be on a bunch of supplements. They don't need to be so sensitive to gluten and other kind of exposures in general, because it's not even just mold. When you've lived in a mold environment, you start getting sensitive to everything.
So it's not, and that makes a lot of sense. So it's not just basically the mold load and how much we can carry or tolerate in our systems, but it sounds like it's how our systems respond to these stressors. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a really great point. I think that sometimes we have an initial catalyst, and sometimes we call it an arrow that happens in life that we can't really, prevent. That's that exposure to that toxin. It's having that injury. It's getting Lyme disease or something, for example. And that does create inflammation. That is a problem that does need to be addressed. But the second part of the disease is your body's response to that, the reactivity that happens. And in this case, it's the immune reactivity. It's this reactive inflammation that occurs that causes a lot of the damage and a lot of the symptoms of these diseases here. And so, ultimately, we want to get out the mycotoxins. We want to kill if there's any kind of actual mold colonization of the body as well, in the sinuses and the gut and other areas. Important. But there's also, before we even treat people, we have to calm down that inflammatory storm to be less reactive so they can even tolerate what that killing or what that detox would even entail. We need to create some space, because if
Uh-huh.
their bucket is so overflowed already and they're just on the brink of having some kind of reaction, they're not going to be able to tolerate detox very well. So, we fix the gut often first. We stabilize the immune response with many immune modulators and advanced peptides. And we start healing up that gut lining. We start getting their energy systems, their adrenals, their hormones, their mitochondria working again, so they just feel a little bit better. We downregulate their nervous system here, so they're out of fight or flight, because we know how much these toxins really can, throw you into fight or flight here. And when things are more calm and grounded, from that place, we can start doing this detox in a very thorough, deep way. We can go much deeper and we can go much more intensely to really get it out. And most importantly, we retest after some of this detox. Within a week or two of finishing whatever we think is going to get most of it out, we check. We make sure it's actually there. And a lot of times people are testing incorrectly. So this could be another topic of, you get tested. I know that I'm living in a mold home, but it's showing that it's negative inside my body. What's going on? A lot of it's inside the tissues. It's not inside the urine. It's not in the bloodstream. So there's a lot of false negatives. And that's why we will sometimes pre-treat people with some liver support, some glutathione, some bitters and things, start
Mhm.
mobilizing some of that before we test, or do it right after a detox.
If if you and that makes a lot of sense. I've been a huge fan of glutathione. I'm in a lot of moldy homes. Just
Uh,
it's kind of a occupational hazard, right? And in addition to my PPE, I travel quite a bit, but I'm a big glutathione fan for sure. I'd like to see if get your thoughts and share. We talk about mold exposure and how we talk about attacks on the nervous system or the immune system in this and how your body regulates. Can you share a little bit from your perspective how that actually happens, what occurs?
Yeah. And, this is important because these are systems that interact very intricately with each other. And sometimes when we're only dealing with one aspect of this system that is interacting, we're not going to make the full gains to really reset things, because the one system you didn't address continues to throw it out of place again. So, mold again goes and collects in the brain. It's very activating to the nervous system, the limbic system, the subcortical brain, where the fear response, the amygdala resides, becomes very reactive. And that can trigger trauma and be less stress resilient, be more reactive emotionally, mentally, and things as well to things that might have not caused issues in the past. And when we have that nervous system activation, that also makes our immune system activated. Our immune system becomes more reactive in response to any kind of threat or stimulus. So, if we want to lower the immune reactivity, we want to kind of shift our autonomic nervous system from sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic. That seems, obvious in some ways, but, you can't just maybe meditate it away. There's other things that we might need to be able to do to medically be able to really calm and ground that inflammatory storm in the brain. So you aren't so restless, you aren't so anxious, you are able to sleep well, you're not shooting out cortisol at every potential perceived stressor here. Because when we are in that fight or flight, that immune system is more reactive. When we're in that calm, grounded place, our immune system's a little bit more tolerant here. But on the other side of the coin, if we don't deal with some of the inflammatory aspects here, that's creating all this inflammation in the brain. The brain is on fire. It's firing, so many times every second. That's all the thoughts, the ruminations, the concerns, the worries, the traumas that are coming out from the rest of our lives. And that triggers, a lot of the nervous system disruption and keeps you in that fight or flight. So, a lot of times what we want to do is, use things like we can go into detail on if we want specific products and things, but things like CBD and things that act on GABA receptors and L-theanine and magnesium threonate start calming down the storm. We use antihistamines and things as well, like quercetin and luteolin and stinging nettle. And we also use peptides like BPC and KPV. KPV is an amazing peptide as an immune modulator to calm down some of this inflammatory storm, to be less reactive here.
You've cleaned, repainted, and replaced filters, and still, you're not getting better. Headache, fatigue, brain fog, the doctors can't explain it, but your environment can. At the Mold Pros, we specialize in uncovering what's hidden in plain sight. Our environmental testing looks beyond surface mold, identifying bacteria, volatile organic compounds, and even mycotoxins in the air that you breathe. Then we correlate those results with your clinical data, showing how your space may be affecting your health. Next, we use our patented remediation process to safely remove toxins, restore balance, and prevent them from returning. It's more than just a cleanup. It's a science-based system designed to help your body heal by healing the environment first. If you're ready to breathe freely again, visit themoldpros.com and schedule your free consultation. Because wellness doesn't start in the doctor's office. It starts where you live.
And that really just allows everything to start calming, grounding. We do that while we're opening up the drainage systems, getting some bitters, getting that bioflow moving and going, because it just stops up. Mold has this propensity to block bioflow, and bioflow is the vehicle for toxicity to leave the body. So if that slows down, it becomes just this big pressure buildup, and it gets backlogged and thrown back into the bloodstream, which then goes into the brain and other places again. So we want to get that flow slowly out, and then we use binders, of course, eventually to catch a lot of that.
Very complex. So you've talked, there's a lot of things that just to kind of unpack that a little bit, you talked about calming down, and I think that's a big one. It's not just the attacks on the immune system that we see, the neurological impacts. It's oftentimes, our clients, your patients, they're in this state of anxiety, right? Going through, I've used the phrase, it can be almost like a PTSD type situation with that. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. That is an important side of what we do, other than just the physical side of things. It's calming that mind down. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't even just want to rely on just supplements and herbs and even really advanced nutraceuticals. That's a great first step, but most importantly, we got to just get out the mycotoxins that are causing all this damage in the first place. But we also have physical things to retrain the nervous system and the vagus nerve. We have things like vagal nerve stimulators now that just have a little electricity right on the vagus nerve here and be 4 minutes twice per day and helps strengthen that whole entire parasympathetic system. And that helps the gut motility and the regularity and keeps you more grounded. It keeps your immune system more relaxed. And so we have other tools. And I say that because sometimes, we think that we need to do everything ourselves, or we just need to reduce stress, or we need to meditate every day. And that's great, and that can work for a lot of people, but when you lived in a moldy home, you actually have this very inflamed brain, and your immune system is very haywire, and we need some bigger guns sometimes. So it's okay to be able to use these things to just feel a little bit better and start getting it out.
So in order to, to get better, get it all out, there's the traditional detox pathways that we've kind of, or modalities that everybody, yeah, goes through and talks about, like glutathione being one, et cetera. In your practice, what do you see is oftentimes missed up and above the traditional detox protocols?
Yeah. And so, and a lot of the people that come to me that have been to many other doctors and they're still very sick, there are similar patterns that are always happening. One pattern is, that they are using a lot of binders, but they're not necessarily doing things that actually help the secretion of some of the, actual toxins themselves. But then the opposite is true. People, doing all these things to, support the NRF2 pathway of detox and the nutrients, the minerals, and the vitamins, the cruciferous vegetable extracts, the glutathione, the bitters, etc. But then they don't use any binder to actually catch it, and it just reabsorbs constantly, right? Because over 80, 90% of toxins coming out of the liver just constantly get reabsorbed over and over again. So you do all this kind of detox, you're taking all these supplements, a lot of it just coming back in the system. Your liver has to reprocess it all, it dumps it again, and just keeps on going back and forth. And it causes damage and oxidative stress in your body, every time it goes through that cycle. So binders are absolutely key. But beyond that, I would say that just doing supplements, normal oral supplements, is not the way to go. We have newer technology these days that have shifted everything in my practice to be able to really help people that have toxicity, that have mold issues. And this is the development and use of something called liposomal nanoparticle technology. And these liposomes are these little fat bubbles that look exactly like our cells. They're made of even what our cell membranes are made of, phosphatidylcholine, these phospholipids. And they put the medicine inside these little bubbles, and they put vibration, sound waves into these sometimes to turn them into nanoparticles. They're very, very small. When you put these liquids under your tongue, they go directly into the bloodstream, even across the blood-brain barrier, into the tissues, into the nervous system, into the mitochondrial membranes where these toxins are hiding and causing dysfunction. They're actually able to bind it, process it, and move it out once for all. And so, that's the kind of cellular detoxification we're talking about that a lot of people don't ever get to. They clean like the liver and the kidneys maybe a little bit, but then more of it just starts coming out because it's all in the tissues themselves. So the drainage systems of the lymphatic system, the kidneys and the liver are great places to start with before you mobilize more stuff, but eventually you want to actually start doing higher doses of some of these things and using this technology to actually go in there to really bind it, and then use the liver support, use bitters to push it out, use binders to be able to catch it. And so, Dr. Christopher Shade's work, he's a PhD in detoxification, and he has a whole product line called Quicksilver Scientific, and it's really
Mhm.
revolutionized the ability to help people at a much deeper level for all types of toxicities here. So in the past, we used to constantly rebuild people's immune systems and adrenals and hormones and have them on anti-inflammatories and histamine stabilizers, and they would feel good on the supplements, and then they would stop these things and they would feel bad again a lot of the times. But now when we're able to do the deeper work, really cutting off the roots of the tree itself, all the leaves of the tree get strong, all the branches get strong, and people get to stabilize and go back into their lives. So that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's amazing when, we're what, 17 years as a company, and we attend a lot of medical conferences. And shoot, when we first started this, you couldn't find 100 practitioners to get into a room and talk about environmental illness. It just wasn't that big of a thing at that point in time.
Yeah.
And some of the new treatment protocols, modalities that we have, or that you have at your disposal, have come such a long way in just really a short amount of time. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. You talked about supplements. I think most people, myself included, I shoot 20 plus supplements a day every morning. I got them all lined up, and of course, throughout the day. But you also talked a little bit about peptides. Can you explain how peptides differ from traditional supplements for long term recovery?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, while a medicine or a drug is a very simple, small molecule, usually that acts very strongly on one receptor to have some kind of action in the body, very reliable, it's very strong, but there's also a lot of side effects there, right? But then natural medicines are, have this intelligence of so many different molecules and nutritional components that help support different body systems. They can build systems over time and heal things long term, but it does take longer. Where peptides are accumulations of amino acids. So a protein might be thousands of amino acids. A peptide might be just, 3, 5, 10, 20, smaller signaling molecules that tell
Hmm.
your body and act on numerous receptors in your body at the same time to guide a response. So there's peptides for healing and repair any kind of injury and damage. There's healing peptides for the brain and neuroplasticity. There's peptides to boost the immune system, to modulate the immune system for autoimmune issues and mold issues. So we use peptide medicine. It's definitely an advancement of the field, and it's a new generation of different medicines that are going to be coming out more and more, even through the pharmaceutical realm. Zempic is an example of a peptide, for example, but they're all
Hmm.
different. They all have different kind of side effect ratios, and some are natural and some are kind of manipulated a little bit here. So, yeah,
Okay.
that's a little bit about peptides. I could go over maybe some of the ones that could be helpful for mold toxicity if you would like.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Again, it seems, and we kind of started this conversation with people that have gone through all the traditional things that you do with an exposure, and they still have this ongoing sensitivity. It's like they never really recover, um, or even get back to what the original baseline was, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. There, they always come up short, it seems like, or they always have that sensitivity. So, yeah, if you could share a little bit more about that and how you've been able to help your patients overcome some of that, traditional canary in the coal mine sort of phenomena.
Yeah. So, one of the first peptides that comes to mind when thinking about mold toxicity is a peptide called KPV. And KPV is a immune modulatory supreme. So that means it lets your body calm down if it's hyperreactive, but also if your immune system is very weak, it can also boost it up and get it stronger again. KPV is really important because there's something in our own brain that is made called alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, or alpha MSH. And when you've lived in a moldy home, you stop making this very well. And this is an important part of immune regulation in our body. So this is why things can go haywire and people can be so sensitive to so many different things here. Most people, when they, get the mold and the mycotoxins actually out, that their immune system will fall back into place and kind of be more tolerant again and be less reactive. But some people need some training wheels and to reset the system a little bit. That can be very helpful with so many things going on because there's these loops of, say, even trauma in the nervous system. That's where psychedelics and things can come in to
Hmm.
reset, retrain new ways of being in the world and these habit patterns that are very strong due to these life events. But same thing with mold. It's almost like a trauma, like you were saying earlier, to the immune system. And the immune system gets this cycle of being in a threat response, being in fight or flight, being hyper reactive and ready to defend itself. And so having these peptides to retrain the immune system can be very helpful. And KPV is definitely one of those. They can calm down that inflammatory storm very quickly. It's something you use earlier on when people are not feeling very well to restore some tolerance. So then we can use other supplements so we can eventually detox them, etc. And it has a lot of great antihistaminic effects too. So, a lot of people that are high histamine have got the rashes and they're itchy and just they're sensitive to everything. KPV will definitely help. We usually combine KPV with something called BPC 157. Probably familiar with that. A lot of your listeners as well, perhaps, because it is the most common and popular peptide in all of medicine in many ways for many reasons, because it just heals and repairs almost all tissues of the body. And so this is typically used in people that have injuries and things that we want to repair, but we use it in functional medicine so much because repairs the barriers of the body. So the gut barrier, for example, where intestinal permeability or leaky gut occurs, is that
Hmm.
source of a lot of that hyperimmune reactivity, because so many things from the outside the world are constantly coming into our bodies, which makes the soldiers of the immune system in red alert, so they feel like they're always under attack. So we're able to seal up that barrier between the external world and the internal world. The immune system can start calming down at a more basic level. It also heals the blood-brain barrier, which is key for mycotoxicity, of course, because it just
Uh-huh.
damages the blood-brain barrier so much. And then all these toxins from the world and proteins from the foods we eat, etc., start going into the brain, which can cause more of this inflammatory response here. And so, combination of these two peptides is great. So we have KPV that knocks down the inflammation and response reactivity very quickly. We have the BPC that starts healing some of that stuff at a deeper level. And we would still do other gut stuff and other kind of, vitamin A, D, E, K, and CBD and other things, but peptides just work really well, and they kind of add a layer of support that is unique and novel and potent.
Very good. And I think that there's a common misperception that after we go through this and people become sort of hypersensitive to these environmental exposures that, they have to live in a bubble for the rest of their life. And that's just not, it's, it's a tough way to live. Right. And so it sounds like some of these treatment protocols can help solve some of those issues. Without naming names, you see a lot of patients. Is there one of the things that we try to do is provide hope, especially when we have some of these difficult cases, these folks that have been struggling for years down
Yeah.
this journey of environmental illness. Is there a particular case where you've had somebody that has had this long-term hypersensitivity and this dysregulation in their system that you've been able to help on their road to wellness? Can you share a little bit about what that journey would look like or that story?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's every day. It's all the time. I think that's my base reality, because we are just doing deeper work to actually address what's causing that inflammation and that hyperreactive immune system in the first place, of course. And we have the technology to get out those actual toxins so the immune system can calm down and relax. And we're not just recognizing that we need to do this detox. A lot of times people coming in, we don't do detox for a couple months even. We got to get the drainage systems open. We need to fix the gut often. A lot of times there's co-infections of candida and things throughout the sinuses and the gut that we need to deal with first and foremost. And when the gut is all damaged, if we start dumping a bunch of stuff from the liver, a lot of that gets reabsorbed again, just right back into the system. There's going to be more reactivity and detox symptoms. So sealing up, fixing the gut, killing off that candida, lowering inflammation, getting energy in the mitochondria is our first kind of prerequisites, really, before we even start doing major detox. And getting the drainage systems of the lymphatic system and using the bitters to get that bioflow back is also one of these first steps. And then we dive deeper, and we dive really deep, and we're able to kind of just use this push catch system, using this nanoparticle technology to be able to just get this stuff out here little bit by little bit. And we use peptides to be able to really regenerate and to re-signal, to reteach and train the immune system that has been damaged to calm down again. And those peptides are, the two that I mentioned, but there's also many other peptides that we would use, like thymolin or thymosin alpha, which are very important at the immune system level to kind of reset some of the architecture to get the immune system working again. But also something like VIP. VIP is something that helps to help with the brain and restores that melanocyte stimulating hormone we were talking about that modulates things. So it calms down neuroinflammation, can fix a lot of the kind of brain symptoms that happen with mold toxicity long term. So between all the tools and all the technologies that we haven't even talked about, I mean, I feel so hopeful that we do have more toxins and more severe disease than we've ever seen before, for sure. But we have more tools and technologies than ever.
No doubt. No doubt. It sounds like it really has to be a very holistic approach to addressing these issues because they are all interrelated. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about functional medicine, right?
Yeah.
Is getting to the root cause and using a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Getting for those folks that have been down this journey for a lot of years, and there's a fatigue that sets in, et cetera, and it's taxing not just on that individual, but of course the family and all. It's the whole bundle, which can sometimes just be too much, too big of a burden to carry. What would you say the most important mind shift for those individuals would be who've been stuck on that pathway for all those years?
Yeah, if it's taking that many years, you're probably not doing something right and you're probably missing some pieces of the puzzle. And maybe you need to reach out to some more support and maybe seeing a different kind of array of practitioners to be able to help you, and that might be different per person, you know. But I do think that mold toxicity is one of the most complex diseases in modern disease that we treat as functional medicine doctors, and I do think that not everyone is really capable of supporting at that level, actually. And so I would say that a lot of people are doing natural medicine or more integrative, but they're using medicines and supplements just like they would use a drug in a way,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
thing for this symptom, but you got to look at it at a bigger level and you got to see all these complex systems that are interacting. And mold just damages so many different systems of the body. So by the time someone gets to me, sometimes there is a lot of neurological dysfunction. Their vagus nerve is not working. So they're stuck in fight or flight, which affects all their gut function. And then there's gut issues and candida overgrowth. There's sinus infections, which go affect the brain and things as well. And there's just all this inflammation and pain. And, pain patterns with mold toxicity. I mean, how many times have I had a patient saying that they've gone to chiropractors and had body work every single week and they're having pain and, oh, it's only on the right side here. And it's because, there is liver tension that's pulling on that myofascial net that pulls on other areas of the body, and the gallbladder meridian is all down on the side of the body here and goes through the liver and goes even down into the feet. And so sometimes we'll have these patterns here and you get adjusted, you do the body work, you take the anti-inflammatory and you're feeling good for a period of time, but then you actually have liver toxicity, you have mold toxicity. That's what's creating that inflammatory storm. So these are just examples that, mold toxicity is one of these great imitators in many ways, is that you have all these different symptoms and you think you're trying to just treat that thing in isolation, but it's not really addressing the problem. It's still mold. You still got to go up and get that. And again, not everyone can support you in that work. So just make sure you're going to a practitioner that really is ready to dive deep with you.
makes sense. So it's not just the mold that makes people sick. It sounds like what you're actually saying is that our our body gets kind of taught to be on guard all the time, and so recovery isn't really just about fighting harder. It's about really retraining the system and getting the individual to feel safe again. If you could leave, this has been great information. If you had one closing thought, one takeaway that you could leave the listeners today, what would that be?
Hmm. I feel like I've stated a lot of my main points here. Yeah, I just having compassion for yourself through this process, that it is one of the most complex conditions, known to man, and is something that heals over time. So you want to balance that patience with yourself and the process with also making sure you're actually doing the right process and getting the support that you need. It is just complex. Mold does not come out very easily here, and you just want to really make sure you're doing it right, because if you're doing it wrong, that can actually cause other problems and other issues here. And don't go years and years still having the continuous symptoms here. There is a way out. There is things to do. You just got to be able to find people to do that. And with that, I would say that I am telemedicine. The people that I've trained here as practitioners, we help people all over the nation. We send supplements directly to your house. house. We have access to these peptides in just oral forms now, so they don't need to be injected. And that's a whole new thing where
Oh,
peptides always were injected. And just as a few months ago, they're in a nanoparticle form that go directly into the system. So we get all these advanced actions just through a supplement. So yeah, hope you can contact us if that is ever helpful. It's Integrative Wellness. My name is Dr. David Morcom.
very good. We'll make sure that they put up your contact information. So it's great to know that you can help people, not just the Dallas area, but all throughout the U.S. If they want to contact you, you said, is there a particular phone number? Is there email that's best,
Yeah, you
or
could
the
just
website?
search for us and go to the website, www.integrativewellnessfx.com.
Okay, perfect, perfect. You can also, if anybody missed that, you can contact the Mold Pros at our website, www.themoldpros.com, and we could certainly connect you that way as well. Well, thanks for joining us today. This has been super informative. And to our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave us a review. And if you know somebody who's going down this journey that it's been elongated, it's lasted forever, sounds like it doesn't need to be the case. And so if that's the case, if they have a mold problem or if they've become that canary in the coal mine, pass along the episode. A small action like this can help get information to people who need it the most. So if you want to learn more about what we do at the Mold Pros or get Dr. Markham's contact information as well, please give us a call. You can reach us toll free 855-595-6653. You can email us info@themoldpros.com. This is your host, John Bodie. I really appreciate you tuning in and hope it's been helpful. Stay healthy. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to Mold, Mycotoxins, and More with John Bodie. If you're ready to take the next step towards a healthier home, follow the show and visit themoldpros.com for your free consultation. Because clean air is the first step to true healing.